people can change their sex, what would someone say who was on the strongly agree to that? Tell him.
I guess if I were to argue for that side, I guess I would start asking the same questions I was asking you before. It's like, if you're taking drugs to change your physical appearance and change biological things, are you not changing the biological makeup, which has to do more with sex than gender? Because I think gender has more to do, like you've said, to do with traits of maybe a male or a female persona. They act in a certain way, they dress in a certain way, they talk in a certain way, etc. Except if you're taking certain things to change physical things about you, does that not have to do with more sex?
All right, where are we today, sir?
We're in Lake Oswego.
And what state is that in?
Oregon.
What a beautiful day and a beautiful state. Okay, so we're going to do the claim. We should no longer use the word gender. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Okay, tell him why you disagree.
I would say I disagree just because the word gender in itself I don't think is inflammatory per se, and the idea of identity and whether that relates to sex and gender, I think, is when it really becomes an odd conversation, especially with people that disagree. I don't think the actual use of the word gender in its right place will really cause much issues, and I don't think taking it out is going to make it any better anyways.
Why do you strongly disagree?
I think we need a word that is not sex itself, but is about sex-associated traits, like sexness, so to speak, like such as how femininity is not female, but it's things associated with femaleness. Similarly for masculinity, how it's about maleness, but it is not male itself.
Okay, so I'm going to do another claim. Sex is assigned at birth. Move. Okay, tell him why you agree.
There's a reason why I'm not on strongly agree. It's because I know that there's cases in which you were born with both male and female parts, but growing up Christian, I do believe that gender and sex should be on the same page with each other. And that's just because God made it that way. And I've grown to believe that and see that in how he's organized the universe. And I don't mean that in a way that's insensitive of anyone's feelings and of how they've grown up and how they felt, because I've never felt that myself. And I've never had to deal with that kind of tension. But because I've grown up in that and I've come to believe that, that's where I am.
What do you mean by assigned? Like when someone says assigned, like what does that mean to you?
I mean, I believe that God has a design for everybody. And then, the word assign is obviously a very inflammatory word nowadays.
Yeah.
But like when God created me, I was going to be a man. And for me, that's not that big of an issue because I never had a problem with that. But for other people, it might be harder because they struggle with an identity. And like I said, I've never dealt with that before, and I have no idea what that's like.
Okay, you strongly disagree that sex is assigned at birth. Why?
Because I think that the language of assigning makes it part of a social process rather than a simple observation of physical reality. Like rather it is more observed at birth rather than that the nurses or doctors said, like, here, now you're going to be male for the rest of your life.
You mean like it's arbitrary?
The assigning itself.
Yeah, the assigning is arbitrary.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Males can never be women. Move. I hate doing this, but I have to. We have to talk about definitions. But what's the definition of a woman?
I typically use the biological one, but in the way that I interpreted this claim, I allowed for the example of, say, like a passing transsexual who people socially treat as a woman.
Okay, so for a woman, for you, has some social component to it.
There's cases where, yeah, it can have that.
Okay, and what do you mean by males? Because that's different from men, no? Or is it just plural?
The male is the sex, and then woman is typically in alignment with sex, but sometimes gender overrides that.
Okay. Males can never be women. You strongly agree. Tell them why you strongly agree.
I think that for me, it's a little easier to be kind of a yes or no because I believe that like womanhood and being female are generally aligned. And I guess maybe I guess there's a caveat of like you can act in a way that's more feminine and like there's a little bit of leeway there. And like I'm not going to say that every person needs to act the same because that would deny like who they are and who
Right.
they've been created to be. But
But you're talking about being women.
right, I think like the identity claim of saying, even though I'm sexually a man, saying that I'm actually a woman is just something that's not true.
So again, I'm sorry to ask you this, but I have to. What do you mean by woman and what do you mean by males? And do you agree with the definition that he provided of women and males?
So within the framework of saying that males is a sexual term, which I had interpreted it that way, and then women, like he said before, can be used a little more generally. But like I said before, I stray on the side of, well, if you're a man, you usually act like or a male, you usually act like a man. A female usually acts like a woman. And I think that obviously, like you said, there's a little bit of social dissonance there. And I think where we probably disagree is how wide that is, right? I would probably say that what's appropriate for each person to act depending on their sex or depending how they identify themselves is a little bit smaller than he would.
Okay, so did he say anything that would move you to the neutral? Because you were hesitant before where
Yeah.
you would go.
I was hesitant about which slightly to stand on or whether to stand on neutral.
What was your hesitancy? Was it the word never?
Probably just the absolutism of that.
So if the claim were males can almost never be women, where would you be?
I would move.
Okay, hold on, let's do that one. Males can almost never be women. Move. That means there are sometimes males can be women.
I guess I'll move to agree just because there's the almost never. And I think just for the reasons I've already stated, and because there's a little bit of more leeway in there, I think it's harder to have an absolute opinion on a question that has so much kind of, well, it's maybe yes, maybe not.
Okay, I have a new claim. Boys and girls should be raised differently. Move. Why do you slightly agree?
Because there are average differences in psychology between males and females, and so they tend to not be different. And so I think because they are different, they should be treated in accordance with that reality that they tend to be different.
You agree with that?
I do, yeah.
So how come you're on the agree and not the slightly agree? I probably should have asked him. But why are you on the slightly agree and not the agree then?
I could also move to the agree. I'm on either one of
Well,
these.
this is a free state here. You can move to wherever you want to move as long as you pick one mat. Does your reasoning justify? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you reasoned yourself into another position. So, and you obviously agree with him because you're on the agree mat.
Yeah. It's pretty clear to me from like people that I've known that like young boys really need a strong father figure in their life, and like young girls really need a strong woman figure in their life. And they also need a strong mother and a strong father, vice versa. But you know, me spending time with my dad looks a lot different than my sister spending time with my dad.
Okay. Go back to the neutral. I have a new claim. It is more important for boys to have a strong father figure in their lives than it is for girls to have a strong mother figure in their lives. Move. You can stay. There's no compulsion to move. You can stay on the neutral if you want.
I think I still have to think through it more. So
Yeah,
I
that's
expect
totally
I'll move
reasonable.
from here.
That's
Yeah.
totally reasonable. Why do you disagree?
I mean, I think that every kid needs if you're talking about like, if you have 0 to 100% parented kid, it's not like as a guy, I deserve 100% like a really good father. And then my sisters deserve like an okay mother. Like that's just not okay and sexist. You know, I mean, men and women we need to be raised well, regardless of who we are, like sexually. It's just not really like, and like having a good mother or a good father looks very different in a lot of different cases. it's very important for me that I have a good father, but I also have a really good mother. And I think it's really important for my sisters that they have a good father and they have a really good mother. I don't think that you can say one is more important than the other.
Did he say anything to convince you to move to slightly disagree? Or you just need more time, which is totally
just to
reasonable.
confirm, the claim is that it's more important for boys to have a good father than it is for girls to have a good mother.
I know it's a hard
one.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Yeah.
I think it's probably more important that in general the mother is more important, regardless of the sex of the child.
That's interesting. Why do you say that?
Because the maternal bond, I think it's stronger. I mean, they grow within the mother and then come from her. And when I think about other ape species, regardless of whether it's a male child or female child, there's a strong bond with the mother, and sometimes the father isn't even in the picture.
Being raised by one father is better than being raised by one mother. Being raised by one father is better than being raised by one mother. Move. You can take your time. You can take your time.
I don't think I'll stay where I'm at.
You're neutral. Tell him why you're on strongly disagree.
Just like I said, that the bond that a mother has with the child on average tends to be a much more central, primary, original bond.
Okay, pause on that. Do you agree with that?
I can see where you're coming from. I think that in some ways it's easier for me to bond with my mother, but in other ways it's easier for me to bond with my father.
Okay, so he's not completely sold, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that typically the mother is more important, and when families do break up, it is typically the mother that does continue to take care of the children. So it seems that that bond tends to be stronger.
Do you agree with that?
I would have to see the statistics of myself, like who usually like the kids go to, and like depending on the age and all that. Like it's a very complex question.
It could be though that the parents go with the children for legal reasons, independent of whether or not those legal reasons are based in biology.
I think legally, family courts tend to default towards the woman having custody.
I think that's right. Yeah. So in other words, that could be those bonds. The children going to the mother could be an artifact of the legal system, as opposed to the mothers want their children more than their fathers.
It could be, but I think that norm in the legal system arose out of recognizing human nature, and that the mothers do tend to be more important.
Okay. People can change their gender. Move. Grab a board. Okay, cool. So I want you to guess. What do you think the reason he has? You both wrote down your best reasons. What do you think the reason he has for standing on agree to the question people can change their gender?
I would guess that what you are thinking is, given that sex is more of a biological thing and gender is more of maybe how you feel or an identity thing, you would say that regardless of how you were born, you have the right to live how you feel.
Is that correct? Yes or no?
I would say no overall.
Okay. I want you to take a guess at his best reason for why he's on the disagree.
I think you're probably on disagree because you think that if someone is born male, they should be a man and are always a man. And if someone's born female, they should become a woman, be a woman, and they can't change that.
Is that correct?
In essence, yeah.
Okay, so turn around and show him. And can you read that to him?
It says that gender and sex go hand in hand. How someone feels does not change facts about them.
All right, not do you agree, but do you understand? Do you understand the reasoning? Not do you agree with the reasoning?
Yeah. I think I understand what he's saying.
Okay, so you can put that down. Now we're going to give you two more guesses as to what he has written on his board over there.
If it's not that. Would you, okay, maybe you're thinking more on the lines of if you were assigned a sex at birth and you were intersex and you decide later to change your gender per se. Is that your reason?
Is that your reason?
No.
Okay.
Does it have to do with one's identity? Is it a question of identity, not of biology?
Part of it.
Okay. So show him what you have and read it, please.
So I said that gender describes sex-associated traits, and people can change some of those traits. So therefore, they can change. their
Can you
gender.
explain that to him and me too?
Yeah, that say if someone is born male and they have discomfort with that and want to change it, they could say take estrogen to change their physical appearance towards being more female-like or feminine.
Okay. Does that make sense to you?
Would you argue that
Tell
if
him,
you're
ask him.
so I guess like if you're actually taking this is something I actually haven't thought about. Like if you're taking drugs to make physical changes and biological changes, is that a change of gender or is that a change of sex?
I would say that's a change of gender because sex cannot be changed.
So then I guess if you're maybe you're going to ask this already, but why can't sex be changed?
That is our next question. Okay. People can change their sex, move. Their sex, not their gender. People can change their sex. Okay. I'm going to let you call it. Call it in the air.
Tails.
Heads, you lose. You have a choice. You can send him over there to argue the position, or you could go over there and argue the position.
I have trouble, I have a strong opinion on this, so it's hard for me to. I could try steel manning that position.
So it's up to you. You can send him over there.
I'll send you over there.
Okay. All right. So send him over there. So now I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about this because you don't believe it.
Sure.
In fact, you were on the exact opposite thing, which is why we had you. And you lost the coin toss, fair and square. You called it. People can change their sex. What would someone say who was on the strongly agree to that? Tell him.
I guess if I were to argue for that side, I guess I would start asking the same questions I was asking you before. It's like if you're taking drugs to change your physical appearance and change biological things, are you not changing the biological makeup, which has to do more with sex than gender? Because I think gender has more to do, like you've said, to do with traits of maybe a male or a female persona. They act in a certain way, they dress in a certain way, they talk in a certain way, etc. Except if you're taking certain things to change physical things about you, does that not have to do with more sex?
I think that that wouldn't change someone's sex because their sex is determined based on whether they developed anatomical features to produce eggs versus producing sperm.
You take that. I'm going to defend this position. If someone underwent a surgery and that surgery, sex reassignment surgery, with very advanced, very sophisticated technologies, and they also underwent, like Blair White did, facial reconstruction surgeries, then that person would appear to be of a different sex. Would you agree to that?
I would agree that having sort of sex trait modification procedures would make them appear more like the other sex, but that wouldn't change whether they have the physical features or ever did have the physical features that are meant to produce either sperm or eggs.
At some level of technology, like if you had womb transplants, if a man got a womb transplant and looked like a woman from very sophisticated surgery and lactated, could we not say that that was a woman?
If those surgeries made it so that that former male could produce eggs, if it changed it so that they could produce eggs and then gestate a child, and then I would say that it changed their sex. Yeah.
So then the question, can people change their sex, you answered in a very, this is not a bad thing, but you answered in a 2024 way. But if we're looking at a 2044 way or sometime in the future, then you would have to go to a different mat.
Yeah, if the technological conditions changed that made sex change literally possible, I would change my opinion on it.
Okay, so if that's the case, then the definition is not fixed.
It currently is fixed, though, in the here and now. In that hypothetical situation, it would not be fixed.
How you doing with this job? Okay.
Not bad.
Okay. So it's either fixed or it's not fixed, and I've given you an argument for when it wouldn't be fixed. At least the argument should be sufficient, I would think, to go to the disagree, because there are some extraordinary circumstances that you can imagine. Like, it's not like you're imagining a round square. Like, you can imagine a situation, especially with the AI taking off, where that would be possible. So if that's the case and the definition is not fixed, so then I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem that strongly disagree would be justified. It seems that disagree would be justified.
Currently, that's not the case, but hypothetically in this future where you can change sex, that would be possible, but that future is not here. It's just an idea at this point, and people can have all kinds of ideas, and they don't necessarily map onto reality. So I don't think I'll shift.
I understand his position.
Cool.
He did a good job. New claim. Gender should be decoupled from sex. Move. Tell him why you disagree.
This conversation has gone a lot different than I had expected.
How are you expecting it to go?
I had no idea. I don't know. Yeah, I guess this is why this is helpful. Gender, I would define as more of an identity claim. And sex is more of a biological claim. That being said, maybe me saying identify as a man has a lot to do with who I am sexually. And I don't think that someone can factually say that I am a woman if they are sexually a man, and vice versa.
I'm on slightly agree, because if this is a claim about ought, like how we ought,
Yeah, should. It is a should claim.
Then I think there are good reasons to allow for some wiggle room for people that have strong distress about their sex and wish to live as another one.
But isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the disagree the wiggle room as opposed to the strongly disagree? Strongly disagree would be no wiggle room. Or did I misinterpret
you're saying
that?
he's given some wiggle room here.
Yeah. I'm saying by him standing on that mat, isn't he giving you what you're looking for?
Maybe not as much.
Okay.
As I think would be appropriate.
Okay. What would it take to change your mind to move you to the neutral?
If it's found that overall that it's not appropriate to decouple them, and that...
What do you mean by appropriate?
In terms of the overall harm to the various segments of society.
He stated what he would need to move him to neutral. What would you have to hear or learn to move you to the slightly disagree?
That is an interesting question, because like the reason I'm on disagree rather than like strongly disagree is like if I see a guy with long hair, I'm not gonna get mad at them, right? That's not like I don't know if that just seems so arbitrary, right? But I think there are certain things, such as like wearing a dress or even like wanting to like drag race, things like that. I think that would be like not how God intended it. So what would take me to move towards slightly disagree?
Yeah.
Is I guess like a real structure of like incrementally how much of another gender's actions are you going to take, and like structure it out, and I could see like, okay, these are the things maybe that like don't matter as much, but these things are like maybe I don't know about that. I guess like if someone gave me more of a structure of like this kind of spectrum of how you act versus how like you are sexually.
When you say how you act, you mean in public or in private?
How you act in public versus how you act in private on this issue, I think should be the same. Because if it truly matters to you if you're taking gender as something that is a fact value, and you found that you are, oh, well, actually, I'm a woman, I don't think that it would be fair to myself and honest to myself to act like a man in private, but act like a woman in public. I mean, I think that would just be like grabbing for social attention.
Okay. All right. New claim. Last claim, then I'll let you guys go. Okay. Let's go. Last claim. Last claim. God intends some people to be gay. Move.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Wow. You're both strong. Okay. Why?
So I've actually heard some incredible testimonies from people who are born with same-sex attraction, but have chosen a life of celibacy because they, in that worldview, have seen that this is not how God had designed this, and I'm going to not live a sexual life at all, and I'm going to.
Like Mormons, I've heard that.
Christians do this too.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to live
Mormons
it.
are Christian, but okay. Yeah.
That's another question.
That's another claim. Okay.
Yeah. And they use that as a testimony to say, listen, like a life of celibacy does not deny you of like the pleasures of life, because I accept that this is the path that God has for me. And if it doesn't involve like having sex or really having like the sexually oriented things in my life, that's okay, because I know that God has this path for me to share about this. And that like something, I think it's Sam Albright is the guy's name. Incredible story. I mean, it shocked me and it changed my opinion about it.
Okay. Now, you're on strongly agree. Do you agree with his reasoning?
I didn't quite understand his reasoning.
Tell him your reasoning again, like in
So-
2 sentences.
People who have chosen the Christian, or who accept the Christian worldview of, or I should say the conservative Christian worldview of, male, female, one marriage, that kind of thing, who have homosexual attractions that they find that they have not been able to get over, choose a life where they do not have sex and do not get married, because they believe that doing so would either put them in a relationship that is A, not loving, or B, is sinful. And I think that maybe God intended that, because I think God uses everything for good. I mean, he says that in Romans 8. And I'm not going to question God's motives. So if someone feels homosexual attractions, I'm not going to say you're a bad person for that. I'm going to say that's because you're different than me. And how you live based off that, I think, is where we really start to talk.
Okay. Do you agree with his reasoning? Do you understand his reasoning?
Did you understand better? I don't know if I explained it well.
I'm not sure if I understand it yet.
Okay. So can I try?
Sure.
And if I get it wrong, would you tell me?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's a Christian.
Yeah,
So he believes that Jesus Christ is the Son of God.
That's correct.
Okay. Just check. Just check.
This is good. You're doing good.
Good. I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I have a little experience with this, but not much. And he believes that certain people are born a certain way. Just as you're born taller than most people. I don't know. What are you, like 6 feet, 6'2"?
I'm like 5'11", so probably 6'2".
6'2". Okay. Some people are born with same-sex attraction.
yeah,
So you're born the way you are because God made you that way.
yeah,
People born with same-sex attraction are born that way because God made them that way.
yeah.
So the question, God intends some people to be gay, is it's God's signature. Now, what they do with that is different, but they were just born, that was the intention of God. Is that clear?
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, if someone's born that way, then that was God's intention.
Oh, so you do agree with his reasoning?
Yeah, I guess I just didn't understand the way he
Okay.
phrased it.
Okay.
So I guess then the difference would be that follows that is like, if you want to take your life and live it in accordance with Scripture, deciding, listen, like I believe that I'm born with like sins, and I'm like have a tendency to do wrong,
Okay.
and a tendency to live in a way that is not how God has not designed, because we live in a broken world.
Okay.
And I think that's really where it's going to be different between you and I. It's what I would expect anyway, that you would believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to do this wrong, that if God intended you to be gay, then you should live and flourish in that, right?
Yeah, that Yeah, if someone was born that way, then it's okay for them to be that way, provided it does not fringe on others.
Okay.
Okay. Let's do that claim. Last one. I lied.
You
Last
said
one. Last one. Sorry. A celibate life is better than a sinful life. Move. A celibate life is better than a sinful life. Well, you guys are really agreeing on a lot. Okay. Give us one reason, and then everybody's we'll close up shop.
My reason for
Well, you're both on the agree. Why?
that, say, like if someone had a sexual orientation that was innately harmful to act upon,
Like children or something.
exactly,
Okay.
then they should not act upon it,
Okay.
and it would be better for them to.
Be celibate.
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree with his reasoning?
I guess like I would argue that like acting sexually in a way that is not how God designed is harmful because you were just getting further and further from how he would want you to live. So like to live a life celibate instead of what I would describe as sinning would be better because you just like Jesus had to deny himself and go to the cross and serve others in that way. And we often have to deny things that we want to do in order to live the life that God has for us. And we always screw up, but that's the path that we're called to take. I don't know if I structured that in a way
that's
that made
good.
a whole lot of sense. But
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for playing. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. I'm surprised you guys agreed on almost everything, really.